The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes your heart beat loud. My uncle's smug smile stretched across his face as if he'd won something monumental. He didn't notice my fingers tightening around the strap of my bag. Around us, whispers floated like smoke, soft and accusing. They thought this would break me, I thought, voice steady in the chaos. But they had no idea what was coming. Just hours earlier, my phone had vibrated with a message I wasn't meant to see, a video my uncle had accidentally sent. My dad laughing, calling me their cash cow, while I'd been quietly helping them cover bills, organize events, even lend money they never asked for. Every word cut, but the sting was sharpest because of the surprise, the betrayal disguised as normal family life. Now, sitting across from them, their eyes gleaming with satisfaction, I realized the scales had shifted. They believed they controlled the story, the room, the outcome. But this time, the story had a twist. A single glance at my phone, hidden beneath the table, reminded me. The truth had already started to fight back. I'd always been the responsible one, the quiet helper who never asked for praise. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window as I carefully balanced my coffee cup and the stack of bills I was sorting. Every envelope told a story, a hospital visit, a late HOA fee, a forgotten subscription. I handled them all, without complaint. My family never seemed to notice the weight I carried. Our neighborhood hummed with routine. Lawn sprinklers hissed, mailboxes clanged, children's laughter bounced off the sidewalks. But behind the white picket fences and neat flower beds, power played its own quiet game. My dad and uncle thrived on control, smirks hidden behind polished smiles. Family gatherings were performances. They favored my cousins for every minor achievement, applauded their mistakes as if they were genius, while my own efforts went unnoticed, or worse, exploited. The symbolic objects in my life were my armor. The old piggy bank on my desk, a relic from childhood, reminded me of every dollar I had saved for myself despite lending them countless sums. The photo album on the shelf held memories I'd quietly created, moments of generosity and sacrifice that no one else seemed to remember. These small personal treasures contrasted with the way they treated me, a resource, a stepping stone, a cash cow. It had started small, a comment at dinner, a dismissive glance during a holiday toast, but it escalated into daily humiliations. I'd been forced to cover my uncle's late fees for months, organize my father's events, even handle neighbor complaints so that they could appear flawless in public. One evening, during a casual backyard gathering, my cousin casually announced a surprise gift from my father, a new watch. The room applauded. I'd bought the decorations, managed the catering, and yet all eyes were on them. The givers, not me, the invisible orchestrator. I smiled politely, hiding the tight knot in my chest. Every humiliation became a quiet warning, a foreshadowing of a larger storm I had yet to see. The piggy bank sat like a silent witness, a metaphor for the value they took and the power I would one day reclaim. Then came the first real sting, the petty cruelty that would foreshadow the betrayal in the video. During a family dinner, I had offered to help my father with a new investment plan. Instead of gratitude, he laughed in front of the others, saying, "Why would I take advice from my cash cow?" Laughter rippled around the table. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, a familiar tightening in my chest. The words stung more than the laughter. That night, I traced the rim of my coffee cup, thinking of every favor, every silent hour, every sacrifice. I realized I had been a pawn. But maybe, just maybe, I was ready to become a player. The stage was set. I had allies I didn't yet know, strengths I hadn't fully discovered, and a truth that was quietly waiting for the perfect moment to explode. And somewhere in the shadows of their smug smiles, the first cracks in their control had already begun. The tension didn't wait. It crept in, subtle at first, then sharp as glass. My father's favoritism became more blatant. Invitations that once included me now skipped my name. Tasks that I had performed silently, efficiently, and without complaint were suddenly ignored, yet when mistakes happened, even those I hadn't made, I bore the blame. Neighbors began whispering, cousins smirked knowingly, and even the HOA subtly aligned with my family's version of events. I became isolated, a quiet figure in the background of a world that had once seemed ordinary. Sleepless nights became routine, the hum of the ceiling fan above my bed a metronome to my racing thoughts. My body ached with fatigue, my stomach twisted each morning, dreading the day's small humiliations. One afternoon, while sorting bills in the living room, my uncle's voice crackled through the phone line, dismissive and condescending. "Why do you even bother? You know it's for nothing," he said, chuckling as if I were the punchline to a private joke. I clenched my jaw, refusing to let anger show, but the sting of his words lingered. It was during this low point that a spark appeared. A friend I hadn't seen in months, someone outside the family's orbit, stopped by unannounced. They noticed the tension in my posture, the fatigue in my eyes, and simply said, "You're not alone in this." Their presence was a reminder that the world was bigger than the walls of judgment my family had built around me. That small act of recognition changed something. I began documenting everything. Notes on conversations, photos of financial transactions, even little reminders of moments when their words and actions contradicted their public smiles. The symbolic objects I had once seen as mere mementos, the piggy bank, the photo album, now transformed into markers of evidence, proof that my labor had been exploited and my value misrepresented. The villain's manipulation intensified. Rumors began circulating. Half-truths spun into full lies. My efforts at work and in the community were questioned. Even casual neighbors seemed to regard me with suspicion. Every interaction became a subtle battlefield. Every smile felt like a trap. Yet amidst the pressure, I discovered an inner resilience I hadn't realized existed. I practiced calm in moments of confrontation, measured my words, and watched carefully. Every misstep they took became a clue, a piece of the puzzle I was quietly assembling. And then came the moment that cemented my resolve. My phone buzzed late one night with a message from my uncle, the same video that would later trigger the courtroom confrontation. My father, laughing and referring to me as their cash cow, unaware that I would see it. For the first time, the veil of normalcy was ripped away. The betrayal wasn't subtle anymore. It was stark, undeniable, and humiliating. I stared at the screen, hands trembling, heart pounding. A chill ran down my spine, not from fear, but from recognition. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And for the first time, the tension between them and me shifted. The rules had changed. That night, as I lay awake listening to the fan hum overhead, I whispered to myself, that was the first time someone reminded me I wasn't alone. And in that quiet moment, a plan began to form. A plan not born of revenge, but of justice. It seemed they had me cornered. My father's phone calls became sharper, more demanding. "You'll regret this if you keep pushing," he warned, his tone clipped but heavy with implied threats. My uncle added his own layer, a casual reminder of debts I'd quietly covered. Even family meetings felt like interrogations. Their polished smiles were knives disguised as civility. Police letters and legal threats landed in my mailbox, each envelope like a weight pressing down on my chest. For a moment, I felt trapped. The walls of my home, once a sanctuary, now seemed to shrink with the weight of their authority. Their confidence was intoxicating to watch. They believed they had won before the fight even began, but the spark I had discovered in the rising conflict began to grow. I had the video, the ultimate proof of their duplicity. The piggy bank, the photo albums, even handwritten notes, all quiet testaments to my diligence and their exploitation, were more than symbols now. They were evidence. I carefully organized each piece, creating a tapestry of proof that connected the dots of years of manipulation. and allies emerged from unexpected corners. A neighbor, previously distant and indifferent, had noticed the subtle mistreatment. A colleague at work offered guidance on legal documentation. Even a mentor I had reached out to months ago resurfaced, providing advice I hadn't realized I'd need so soon. Suddenly, I was not isolated. I was gathering strength, assembling a network that could match, and even surpass, their carefully constructed web of control. The first confrontation came at a routine family gathering, one they had expected to be mine to serve, not to witness. My father began his usual smirk, preparing to dismiss me publicly, but I calmly placed the video on the table, letting the phone screen face upward. Their laughter faltered. They thought they still had control, I reflected in the quiet of my mind. But they didn't. The shift was instantaneous. My father's smugness wavered, my uncle's certainty cracked. Yet, rather than admitting defeat, they doubled down, launching into a defensive tirade. Threats, accusations, and old grievances spilled forth, but their words no longer held the same power. I had anticipated them, documented them, and was ready to counter each one with undeniable proof. By the end of the night, a subtle but unmistakable change hung in the air. The scales had begun to tilt. My allies, previously shadows on the periphery, now stood closer. My own voice, once quiet, had grown firm. And in the silence after their storm of words, I felt it, the first true taste of control. The midpoint twist wasn't just the revelation of my hidden advantage. It was the awakening of strategy, the realization that the years of small humiliations had prepared me for this exact moment. The villains, so used to dictating the narrative, were now reacting, scrambling, and unsure. The storm had begun, and I was no longer waiting for it to pass. I was ready to direct it. The subtle cracks in their control widened into fractures. My father and uncle, frustrated by my calm resistance, began a more aggressive campaign. Rumors spread through the neighborhood, half-truths twisted into lies about my character and my intentions. Even casual acquaintances started asking pointed questions, their smiles polite but curious. The HOA became a silent battleground as their subtle influence seeped into every committee and meeting. They recruited flying monkeys, relatives, distant neighbors, anyone who could serve as an extension of their power. Invitations were delayed, meetings misrepresented, and even my friends felt the pull of doubt as whispers reached their ears. Each act was calculated, meant to isolate me, break my focus, and erode my confidence. But I had grown into a strategic warrior. Every lie they spun, every rumor they whispered, I documented. Every conversation was recorded, every bill noted, every gift accounted for. My symbolic objects became weapons of proof. The piggy bank, once a childhood keepsake, now represented the countless funds I had provided and the debts they owed me. The photo albums and notebooks became evidence of labor and loyalty exploited. Allies strengthened around me. The neighbor who had once been distant now offered testimony. Colleagues provided legal insight. My mentor advised, coached, and helped me refine the story I would eventually tell. Therapy sessions reminded me that my value was independent of their manipulation. I was no longer reacting. I was anticipating. Every move they made was countered by careful documentation and strategic patience. As their empire of deception grew more desperate, cracks appeared in their facade. Arguments broke out in private gatherings, letters were misplaced, threats grew frantic. The first time I saw my father's hand tremble while trying to maintain a confident tone, I knew the shift was real. Their control was unraveling, thread by thread. And yet, the climax had not arrived. The tension built with each day, each whispered rumor, each attempted sabotage. I could feel it, the moment of reckoning approaching. Every ally, every piece of evidence, every quiet hour of preparation pointed toward a single day, a single confrontation where the truth would be undeniable. The day of reckoning was coming, and no one could stop it. In the quiet of my apartment that night, I arranged my documents, stacked the evidence neatly, and glanced at the piggy bank. It wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was a warning. I had been patient, I had been strategic, and I had waited. The battle wasn't over, but the war was turning in my favor. The room was silent before I even spoke. The courtroom, or in this case, my father's meticulously curated living room, felt like a stage set for a final act. All eyes were on me. My father's jaw tightened, my uncle's smirk faltered, and distant relatives shuffled nervously, sensing the storm about to break. The air was heavy with anticipation, like the quiet before lightning strikes. I placed the photo album on the table first, opening it to pages filled with evidence of my labor, generosity, and years of overlooked contributions. The piggy bank sat beside it, now a visual testament to the money I had quietly managed, lent, and lost on their whims. Then I dropped the bomb, the video. My father, laughing and calling me their cash cow, stared back at me from the screen. His smug confidence dissolved instantly into shock. My uncle's hands trembled as they hovered over the device, trying to stop it, trying to maintain control. "Enough," I said, my voice calm but firm. "This is the truth. Every word, every action, every hidden favor documented. It's all here, and it ends now." The room was frozen, silence pressed against the walls, the kind that makes hearts pound so loudly you can hear it in your ears. My allies, friends, neighbors, mentors, watched from the edges, their presence a reminder I was never alone. The villains could not manipulate witnesses, twist conversations, or fabricate reality any longer. Every word I spoke was deliberate. Every gesture reinforced my authority. I laid out debts, evidence of favoritism, manipulation, and emotional cruelty. Each piece of proof collided with their constructed image, shattering it in real time. My father opened his mouth to speak, but the room was already absorbing the undeniable truth. Finally, I looked directly at them, calm and unwavering. "I don't want apologies," I said. "I want change." The words hung like a verdict, undeniable and final. The collapse was immediate. My father's facade crumbled. My uncle's authority evaporated. Even the relatives who had once aligned with them shifted uncomfortably, realizing the empire of deception had no foundation. The power they thought they controlled had been an illusion all along, and the architect of that revelation was me. In that room, filled with evidence, silence, and witnesses, I reclaimed my worth, not through anger, not through revenge, but through undeniable truth. The villain's smiles, once smug and confident, were replaced by a visible reckoning, the weight of their actions pressing down on them in full. The days after the confrontation were quieter, though not empty. My father and uncle receded, their authority stripped and their influence diminished. Relatives who had once whispered behind my back approached with tentative apologies, their expressions uncertain. Some were sincere, others cautious, but none could undo the truth that had been revealed. I began to rebuild my life deliberately. The apartment I had once rented out of necessity became a home of choice. I redecorated it with objects that now carried new meaning. The piggy bank, once a symbol of my labor and exploitation, now held $2 bills, a playful reminder that even small contributions have value. The photo albums, once quiet witnesses of my efforts, were framed and displayed, a testament to my perseverance and integrity. At work, I approached projects with renewed confidence. No longer weighed down by the shadow of family manipulation, I thrived in my own right. I cultivated relationships that were genuine, surrounded myself with allies who celebrated rather than diminished my efforts, and reinforced boundaries that ensured my well-being. Emotionally, I found closure. The betrayal that had cut so deep no longer held power over me. I forgave, not them, but myself, for years of blind devotion and unrecognized sacrifice. The calm reflection I had nurtured throughout the conflict became a constant companion, reminding me that worth is not assigned, it is claimed. And yet, the cinematic contrast was undeniable. The opening humiliation, whispers, smirks, and public dismissals was now replaced with empowerment, quiet authority, and respect earned on my own terms. My symbolic objects, once markers of exploitation, had transformed into tokens of victory, resilience, and self-acknowledged value. As I stood on the balcony one evening, the city lights stretching out like stars below, I realized something profound. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The scars remained, yes, but they no longer dictated my life. They reminded me of what I had overcome, of the strategy, patience, and courage it had taken to reclaim my story. The air was cool, carrying the faint hum of traffic and distant laughter. For the first time in years, I breathed freely, untethered from manipulation, unafraid of whispers, and confident in my own worth. The world hadn't changed. They had. But I had. And that made all the difference. Have you ever faced favoritism, betrayal, or the quiet abuse of power? Felt like your efforts were invisible while others claimed the credit? You're not alone. I want to hear your story. How did you rise above it? What strategies helped you reclaim your worth and voice? Share your experiences in the comments and join a community that understands the struggle and the triumph. Remember this: worth isn't something they give you, it's something you claim for yourself. Every act of courage, every moment of patience, every piece of truth you uncover strengthens you. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for recognition. Stand tall, document your truth, and let your life reflect the value you've always carried. Your story matters, and it deserves to be heard.